Well, I'm talking with Dr. Joe-Neary with Colorado State University, and we're at the Academy of Veterinary Consultants Conference in Denver, and we've been talking about bovine pulmonary hypertension and what's commonly known as brisket disease or high altitude disease, but some of the research that you've been involved in is really showing that that there's more to it than just a condition for high altitude cattle. Is that correct?
That's correct, John. We've seen from studies conducted on high altitude ranches that pulmonary hypertension is still fairly prevalent, even in herds that have been selecting for low pulmonary pressure in the sires. And so maybe the presentation of the disease has changed slightly since the disease was first reported 100 years ago in South Park, Colorado. So we've been following up on studies identifying risk factors for pulmonary hypertension in calves, pre-weaned calves, but also there have been increased reports of pulmonary hypertension, sudden death due to congestive heart failure in feedlot cattle. So we've been doing physiological studies, epidemiological studies, looking at risk factors in feedlot cattle too.
And I understand that in some of the feed yards where this is turned up are not really at what we would consider high elevation.
That's correct. Traditionally it's thought to be a high altitude disease because low level of oxygen at high altitude is thought to cause pulmonary vasoconstriction and then thickening of the pulmonary arteries, increasing resistance to flow, and then increasing pulmonary pressure. But we're also seeing in the feedlot cattle pulmonary hypertension as low as 3,000 feet it has been reported at, and also increasing in incidence in feedlots that we've been working with in Nebraska at 4,000 feet. So one of the risk factors seems to be maybe an increased rate of gain that cattle today can perform at. And so there are parallels with fast growth in broiler chickens. And so fast growth in broiler chickens was first identified to cause pulmonary hypertension at altitudes over 10,000 feet. And over the last, that was in the 1960s, and then since then, by 1990, pulmonary hypertension was identified in fast-growing broiler chickens at sea level. So we've been doing studies looking at whether cardiopulmonary insufficiency, so the heart and lungs, maybe they can't deliver sufficient oxygen to the rapidly growing tissues, the rapid rate of gain, and so maybe having an inadequately sized heart and lungs may be a risk factor for pulmonary hypertension as well as altitude.
And I understand that there seems like there could be some link with kind of a prevalence of or a susceptibility to bovine respiratory disease as well.
So the theory that we're working on now is that the heart and lungs are perhaps undersized relative to the oxygen demands of the modern beef animal, perhaps even in the high-performing dairy cattle too. So in order to meet those oxygen requirements, there's greater stress on the lungs, which requires greater turnover of oxygen, and so greater exposure to potential pathogens in the environment, and even dust and perhaps even dry air may be basically inhibiting the clearance of pathogens and dust from the lung through the mucociliary apparatus. So perhaps just because there's greater demand for oxygen, there's greater stress on the heart and lungs, which may be undersized, so they have to perform even more than they used to, say, 50 years ago. That's one thing we've been working on too, is looking at using SNP chips to look at basically if there's any genetic associations with some of the physiological traits that we've been looking at, so lung function and cardiac function too. So the ultimate goal is eventually to be able to match the heart and lungs to the performance of the heart and lungs to the potential productivity performance of the animal.